Other news to tell you about this evening: just a few years ago, Springfield was one of the top 10 most violent cities in the state. They had a huge gang problem.
But now the town has had its second year without any murders. Our Crime Tracker investigator, Joseph Pleasant, is live in the News 2 Crime Tracker Center to show us just how they did it. Joseph?
That's right, Ann and Bob. People would be surprised to find out that a small town like Springfield had a big gang problem, but it did. And all that gang activity was bringing crime into the area that was terrorizing that small community. In fact, magazines were doing stories about small towns that were impacted by the rise of gangs, and they featured Springfield. But as I found out, a new police chief and a new partnership with the federal authorities helped turn all that around. In Springfield in 2011, Detective Charles Consiglio and his fellow officers had a big problem.
Seems like every time you turned around, every homicide that we had, or every armed robbery that we had, or every aggravated assault that we had ended up being gang related.
As Detective Consiglio drove us through the gang hotspots, he told us about 2011, which he calls a breaking point. There were 4 murders that year. It may not seem like a lot, but for a town the size of Springfield, it is. Chief David Thompson told me it made his city one of the top 10 most dangerous in Tennessee.
I think we eventually identified 13 different gangs here.
2011 is also the year Police Chief Thompson took charge of the department.
We found a lot of them here because when people get out of prison, they bring their gang affiliations back. We also found that, especially with juveniles, that people were sending them here because they didn't think we had any gang activity here.
The police chief told me one of the biggest challenges to fighting gangs here in Springfield was getting the people of Springfield to admit the gangs were here in the first place. So the department set out to first identify the gangs in town and their members. Detective Consiglio led the project. Then in 2014, the police department partnered with federal agencies like the ATF. The agency identified violent offenders, ran undercover stings, and charged them federally. These 3 men were among the first. They are all currently serving 10-year federal sentences, and at the federal level, that is day for day.
I've seen grown men sit back there, and when they found out, when they were introduced to the ATF agent, case agent, they literally sat there and cried because they knew they were going to federal court.
The ATF presence has been, it's kind of a godsend, really. You know, once that happened and the word got out what we were doing, it really slowed the flow.
Now, in 2016, violent crime in Springfield is significantly lower, and the flow of illegal guns into town has pretty much stopped. And the criminals are on notice that Springfield may be a small town, but it's not under-equipped to handle big city problems.
They come to the communities that they feel that, you know, only have just a few cops, and they get here and realize that we don't just have a few cops, we actually have quite a bit, and we have, you know, special investigations officers.
They also have federal agents standing with them, ready to crack down on gangs.
And we should mention that the ATF works with a lot of smaller communities like Springfield across the country to cut gun violence and gun trafficking in their areas. And they also want your help to do so. So they've started a program called Report It. There's a free app you can download on your cell phone where you can report anonymously gun violence or gun crimes in your area directly through this app. I put all the information on how to download it in my web story on WKRN.com. With a Crime Tracker Center, Joseph Pleasant, News 2.